Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and today we are joined by a special guest from halfway around the world. Bella Duncan is joining us. Bella is a kid with two homes, and she truly, literally is. She just pointed out we had our pre-interview chat a few weeks ago, and she had a different background, and it's because today she's in her different home. She's in her dad's home, and last time we spoke, she was in her mom's home. And she has been a kid with two homes for most of her life. And Bella, I think what's really interesting, among many things, is that at 22, you have already created this website and blog, A Kid with Two Homes, that really talks about your experience going all the way back to 3 when your parents separated and divorced. So you're a wonderful resource for not only the children of divorce, but for their parents and the adults around them as well. I mentioned to you that I think I know divorce, right? I've been a divorce professional for 32 years. But when I read your blog, I get insights into the child or children's perspective that only, that you have a beautiful way, by the way, of putting out there. So let me just say thank you so much for joining us. I know it's later in the day for you. It must be quite late in the day for you. So, or no, actually it's early in the morning, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. here. That's it.
It's just tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. That's right.
Yes.
That's okay.
So welcome and thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Susan. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, and I really am excited to have this chat with you. I think that this idea of talking about divorce and providing insights into the divorce process through a child's eyes. There have been some ways that I've seen it. There's the movie Split by Ellen Bruno. Ellen's been on the show. I've read books that have been written, but there's something about your perspective and your talent for being able to break it down into really simple terms that really, I think, makes you valuable for both children and parents. But, what got you started putting this out there for people, your personal experience?
Okay, so I might start with a bit of the background to my story. It's quite a unique story. So my parents divorced when I was 3 years old, as you mentioned. And ever since then, I have been a kid with two homes. From about the ages of 3 to 18, it was quite a high conflict situation. I have a younger brother who is my best mate, and we go everywhere together. And I'm quite protective over. My parents, both of them, I have a fantastic relationship with, and I think that might be testament to, as a fact, why I'm still at 22 years old, a kid with two homes. At the age of 18, though, I was really feeling the pressure of being a kid with two homes in a high conflict situation, and I said, enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. This is too much pressure, too much responsibility, too much stress. And it was taking away so much from my life and my ability to focus on my goals. And so I said to my parents, hey, we've got to work this out. I know, it might seem not too bad in your worlds, but it's just overwhelming in mine. And by communicating that message, that started the ball rolling. It was not an easy process, and it's much easier to say than it was to do. But it really started on my year 12 graduation night. Where I had both families there, and not just both families there with me sweating bullets because I was so worried that they were both there at the same time, but actually they're allowing me to enjoy my night. Snowball that, had my 18th, both parents, both families, probably one of the best days of my life. 21st, both parents, both families, another really special day in my life. And then it got to a point where everybody was really okay with each other that we decided we were going to play in a basketball team together. My mom, my dad's wife, my mom's partner, me, my boyfriend, and my brother in a basketball team together on a Sunday night. So that's where we're at now. We've done a huge 180, but it wasn't without its challenges. So very happy to share all that I learned through that process.
Well, So I love that. And are you Team Duncan? I need to know.
We're actually called, my dad's a sports scientist, and he's got his own philosophy, and it's called 100x because you needed everything you do at 100%. So that's just a bit of insight into my mentality. But no, we're not called the Duncans, we're called 100x. But we could
Well, I
definitely
love
be called the
that.
Duncans.
My listeners may or may not know, but my married last name is Duncan, and we call ourselves with the extended family Team Duncan. So I was thinking that we even have like little t-shirts we had made up.
Oh, best.
But so I love that story because first off, the thing that really strikes me in that is you said, your parents got divorced when you were 3, and you needed to have this chat with everyone when I want to use the phrase you used, which is, I think, what you call in Australia, we call it graduation from high school. You're 12
Yeah.
year?
Year 12. Yeah, year 12 graduation. Your last year of your senior year in America.
Okay, we do the same thing, senior year. So that seems like a huge lapse of time. And I think for many parents and adults, that they would think, well, that the divorce happened eons ago. Why is this still a part of your life?
Definitely. And I think that was hard to grasp now looking back on it, because even sometimes now I think it took all those years and now we're at where we're at. I almost envy the fact that it took that long. But in hindsight, I do realize that in my unique situation, I guess that's what it did take. And maybe I was communicating that message earlier on, but not every party came to the table. And that's okay. And that's something that I have to accept now. But definitely my message and the reason for why I wanted to put A Kid with Two Homes out there is to say, hey, you can have these conversations earlier. And hey, parents, this is how your kids are feeling now. You don't have to wait till they're 18, till they have a voice where they really feel like they can control the situation. Take that responsibility out of their hands. What can you be doing better?
Well, that's a critical point right there. Is many parents think, well, if the kids are upset or they're not liking how things are going, they'll come to us and tell us. And that is putting your kids in the middle. That's putting your kids in the position of having to point out to you that what you as adults are doing is not working for them, which to a degree is what you ended up having to do at your graduation. Thankfully, you had supportive family that came together and supported you, it sounds like, in having that conversation with them.
For sure, they definitely did. And it's like, specifically at that point in time, it was very different to previously. So my parents were always very present, very hands-on parents, very involved in my life, just not without the conflict between each other. So to have so much love surrounded by me, to be surrounded by so much love, yet to have that conflict was just a massive oxymoron for me. And I just could never get my head around it. And everything from the outside might have looked okay. And when my parents maybe reflected, they're like, no, we provide this. It's a good world. And brilliant. I'm so privileged. I've had a beautiful childhood, but there was so much pressure and conflict and underlying responsibility in my heart that I couldn't express. And that's again why I just want to put out all these feelings that your kids may be feeling, because that's definitely what I felt, but couldn't communicate it necessarily effectively. And if I did, maybe my parents weren't at a point in their life where they really heard what I was trying to say or understood the ramifications of the conflict.
Yeah. Well, and that's a word you just have used a few times there, conflict, and mentioned that that it was a relatively high conflict, or there was high conflict at times. One of the things that I love about your blog, I'm just going to say, is that when you write articles, each one just has a one-word title. And one that jumped out at me, honestly, it was the one entitled Conflict. And I'm just wondering, because you do this so beautifully, can you describe for listeners how that conflict translated into your life?
Yeah, definitely. So conflict can come from a million places. And sometimes it might be really subtle conflict. So let's take a really simple example. When you're a kid with two homes, there's pick up and drop off. So before I turned driving age in Australia, mom and dad would have to drop us off at a location and pick us up from a location. So I've got very vivid points in my life that are dictated by that location. So I think, oh yeah, when I was in year 3 to year 5, BP station, the petrol station, was our location. And then when I was, 13 to 15, it was the sports complex up from mum's house. It was to the point where, my parents didn't drop us at each other's houses. And that in itself was a bit stressful because, we'd have to meet somewhere. So let's take the conflict in this situation. The conflict usually derived from the fact that one parent was late or one parent was waiting. So I would be extremely stressed if mum was maybe a bit purposely being a bit late to drop us off, and I knew dad was waiting at that location, so eager to see us, but I felt like I had no control over it, which I didn't have any control over it. So dealing with that stress and that knowing coming up conflict, that when we got there, dad would be like, why are you guys late? Mom being like, we're not late, like it's fine. That was stressful. So when you get to the pickup drop off location and dad's a bit like, where are you guys being? And mom's like, whatever. It's that little subtle conflict. It might not be a full screaming match. Sometimes it might be, but that in itself can make your kid really anxious around pickup drop off time. And already they're probably feeling a little bit unstable from going from one house to the other. And that transition period really should be a safe space because it's already difficult in principle. So that might just be a very simple example, yet impactful reason why, conflict can arise.
Yeah, well, and I think right there in that very simple description, it's much easier now for a parent to understand how it all trickles down, right? Everything they do translates into their children's lives, into their children's experience. And not just that one drop off or pickup, but now you're nervous the next time. Exactly. And the next time, and that you remember where the pickups and drop offs were when they weren't at the home. Exactly. It all just adds up into a compilation of conflict having a role in your life.
And that's it. And I do make it very clear that, you can try so hard to make one pickup drop off great. But as soon as you let it go and you start putting your feelings as a parent who's quite angry about the divorce or angry about your situation and the conflict between you and your ex-partner, then that can all just disappear and your child can become quite anxious about those situations. I think a good quote that I like to say often, that I truly genuinely believe, if it's obviously safe to do so and reasonable to do so, showing respect for your co-parent is showing respect for your child. And that in itself can be really difficult, I understand, but I'm an advocate for the kid. Showing respect for your co-parent for your kids is fundamental to them really not having that I'm in the middle feeling.
I love that. I'm the advocate for the kids because you are a kid. You're 22 and you've been through this your whole, this is really the vast part of your life. Do you remember if your parents divorced when you were 3? Do you remember your parents together?
So I have very vivid memories about dad at home, very, very glimpses. Them being actually together and happy together, no. I think that's something that I can't offer a perspective with. So I was actually having this conversation with dad yesterday, and we have hard conversations. I think it's really important in our relationship. And I said, I see some people say, it's so important that you get divorced for your kids. You need to show them what's what's a healthy relationship and not to stay in a toxic relationship. And I logically empathize with that, because all situations are very unique, and if it's definitely not safe or reasonable to stay in a relationship, I understand. But I find it really difficult, having had my experience, to advocate for divorce. I was 3 years old. I don't know what it would have been like if I was 15 and said, hey, no, you can sort this out. Like, let's really consider what are the issues here. Obviously, as a kid, you're not known to all the issues in a marriage, and you're not known to how bad it can get. But as a kid, having gone through only a divorce and not seeing the marriage at its worst or at its best, that's something I'm not privy to. So definitely a conversation I want to open up with other kids who have experienced that, and have gone through that.
Right. And well, and I think it's an interesting juxtaposition right there, right? You have your experience, and you're wonderfully able to share that and dive inside of it, and the emotional content behind it in a way that I have to say far exceeds your years on this earth. To be 22 and to be able to break down the very complicated emotional construct of, everything that it goes on in this. It's truly amazing. But you also are able to see that your journey is different from other kids' journeys, and everyone's going to have different perspectives. But you still do, that in mind, you still manage to capture so many of the common experiences. And another one that really jumped out for me was the blog post you did on pressure. The pressure that kids feel. And I was like, you had so many more definitions of pressure in there than I jumped to one thought of what the pressure was. And then the article had all these different examples.
Yeah. I might go into them if you like me.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah. So I speak about how, as a kid, you should be feeling pressure. Pressure is part of life. That is something that we all experience, and it can really build you to be resilient and give you a lot of great life skills. So you should have pressure around your grades, around school, around your ability to maintain really important relationships in your friendships. But as a kid of divorce, I don't see pressure as that. I see that as the easy stuff. I saw pressure as, okay, I feel pressure to maintain this relationship with my brother where he's not privy to any of this pressure I'm feeling. So I felt pressure to feel responsible for him in a way. Or I felt pressure to, when it came to that pickup drop-off situation, coming back to that example, to make sure that nobody yelled at anybody and everybody was happy. Again, not my responsibility, but I felt that pressure. I felt pressure to spend quality time with my parents because that was taken away from me, I felt. Or it wasn't necessarily taken away from me. I probably have spent so much more quality time with my parents singularly than some kids who live under the same roof 24/7, because I've actively felt that pressure and actively engaged in spending that time. Of course, there's positives out of it all, but that pressure and that feeling should never have been my responsibility. So as you would have seen in my blog, I often say, okay, this is the problem, pressure. This is what pressure is. This is how you may be feeling it. How do we deal with it? I don't like offering problems without a solution. And so I think that's why I'm really passionate about giving kids and parents tools to help them get through that. And one tool that I speak about so often, pretty much every time I come up with a problem, is focusing on what you can control. And as a kid of divorce, understanding that, saying that to yourself and really deciphering what can I control and what can I not control will be the bread and butter of you moving forward and focusing on your life. So definitely that pressure, focusing on, okay, I shouldn't feel this pressure because one, it's not my responsibility to look after my brother. Yeah, as a sister, but not in a motherly way.
Right.
And I should really focus on, okay, how can I control my own actions to help my mind move forward without this overwhelming feeling of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, that what you can control is such a mature concept. Really, I talk to adults every day when I'm doing coaching with people who are going through divorce, trying to get them to understand that they can only control what they can control. And to hear you break it down into rather what seems simple terms, but to have a grasp of that concept is pretty remarkable. And another thing I thought of when you were just saying that about that feeling to have quality time, with the pressure to have quality time with your parents, I wonder if another loss of the situation it was the loss of your own personal time, because you're constantly feeling that pressure to have quality time as you go between the two homes.
Yeah. So I recently put out a reel saying, make time for you. This was a particular day where I finished my degree. I had spent quality time with everybody that I needed to, and parents aren't just included in that. In the divorce, you're divvying up your time, not only focused on your parents, but also your grandparents. Now you've got two separate places to go. If you have a partner, if you've got friends, and then there's you, and you forget about that quite often. And I don't really remember making very much time for me in my younger years. That wasn't something that I enjoyed because I didn't do often. But very much in my later years, I have really put my head down and said, no, you have to make time for you. You have to enjoy your own company. One quote that I really like is, if you can't enjoy your own company, how can you expect others to? And so that's something that I've really had to look straight in the eye and say, okay, let's do this. So yeah, I'll take myself to the beach, or I'll read a book, or I'll even get up maybe a little bit earlier to spend that time with myself. Again, it shouldn't be my responsibility to make time in the day so I can fit everybody else in. But that's what's important to me, and I choose that. But it shouldn't feel like an obligation to put everybody else first and then leave you hanging, and your own mental health is just dissipating. I think it's so important that kids of divorce really reflect on themselves and really think, okay, am I okay? And how can I help myself here?
Yeah. Well, and think about it. It was described to me once as, as children go between two homes, they go to the second home, or the home they have not been in for the past few days. And that parent is so excited to see them. They haven't seen them for a few days. They've got all these fun plans, or they want to hear all about what's gone on and what have you done? And let's get caught up. And then it cycles again, because now the child then goes back to home one, and it's the same thing. Now that parent hasn't seen them for a few days. And in that, there really isn't time for a child to be a child, to be in that moment. Not that the children don't want to have that time with parents, but there's a big loss. I think about it, as a grown-up, I enjoy my personal time. Like I'm an extroverted introvert. I love to get out there and talk to people, but then I need to go sit in a corner and recharge for a while. Everybody needs a little bit of alone time. And that's just another, maybe casualty in the whole process for kids if nobody's even thinking about it.
Definitely. And it's like you're a rare product, and everybody wants a little bit of you, and it's often filled with so much love, which is put you in a difficult position to actually realize that you're not getting everything out of life that you actually need to, meaning that personal time by yourself where you're not stretched so thin. Like, for example, Christmas Day for me and my brother, at one point we were going to 6 different places just on Christmas Day. Christmas Day to us is hectic. We love it. It's a beautiful celebrating day, but it's extremely stressful, and we are in the car so often. And that in itself, you leave one place, which is sad because you're leaving somebody, and then you get into some other place and they're so happy to see you and you're so happy to see them, but you're exhausted. And so it's really about finding that balance. And I say to kids of divorce, this is where communication comes in, and communication is absolutely vital. And yes, like you said at the very start, kids shouldn't be expected to confront adults with very adult problems and tell them that this is the problem. But as a kid, I do realize that sometimes that might be the solution, and to equip other kids with the skill to communicate effectively, I'll do that every day of the week if I can.
Yeah, well, so what do you think that skill set is for kids? You sat down and had a very adult conversation with the adults in your life when you graduated from your senior year. But for children to sit down and talk to parents or be able to communicate with them, how do you help them do that?
Yeah, so I actually have a blog on this, and I go into quite a step-to-step detail on how you should communicate, but I'll just very vividly, very casually go through it. So first, I think you need to understand, what is communication? What am I trying to communicate? Get the message in your own head. Okay, I want to say, let's say, for example, I want to say that I want both my parents at my grand final, my netball grand final. But mom doesn't want dad there, and dad finds it too stressful when mom's there. So it's a bit of a too hard basket, but you really want them there. So you want to communicate this message, and whatever happens, happens, because you can't control the outcome, but you can control how you communicate it. So first, you're going to decide what the message is. Message, plain and simple. I want you both at my netball grand final. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I just want to put it out there. It is. Honestly, it is.
Yes.
I want to put it out there, and I want to tell you that that's something that's really important to me. Okay, cool. You've got your message in your own head. How are you going to communicate it? This can be a bit difficult. Some kids don't like to sit their parent down, or don't have the relationship to sit their parent down and say, hey, by the way, you might want to write a letter. You might want to put it in writing. You might want to, call them over the phone if you don't want to do it face to face. Whatever you find the most effective way for you to less that stress and that responsibility of communicating that message, go with it. Then you have to determine in your own mind what you want the outcome to be. Obviously, in this situation, you want both your parents to be at your grand final, no conflict. But then in saying that, you're going to have to realize that you can't control the outcome. All you can control is the fact that you have in yourself done everything that you can control, which is communicate that message. And then the outcome will be the outcome. And then from there, you can maybe communicate a bit more. Maybe mom will turn around and be like, no way, I'm going to be at your netball grand final and dad's not coming. And you say, okay, well, that actually makes me feel horrible, because I'm saying this is really important to me, and you're saying your conflict's more important than that. And sometimes that might open your parents' eyes. Other times it might not, but you can't control it. All you've done is communicate that message as effectively as you possibly can. And those are some very simple steps that I say, try to lock in. And you might fail again at trying to get that message out. You might never get that message out, but those steps really helped me in ultimately communicating that message when I turned 18.
Well, I mean, for every adult out there listening to this podcast episode, they should write those down, because I talk every day with people trying to help them get ready to go into conversations about telling their spouse they want a divorce, or how to negotiate the terms of their settlement. And I've not heard another adult go through that as cogently as you just did. And giving yourself the grace to understand that all you can do is put it out there, and you can't control the outcome. I love that. I think that is, with that alone, you've helped every parent who's listened to this. And if they translate it to their children, or they have their children listen, you've helped every child who's just listened to this, because think of the conversations that can now happen in the space that you've given them to have those. So that's a gift right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's exactly why I do what I do. So if that impacts one person, I'll be a very happy person.
Well, I guarantee if somebody out there just found that impactful, and whether you're a child or a parent, you let us know, because I want to pass it on to Bella. Again, I've said this before in this episode, but this idea, I have 3 stepchildren today. The day we're taping this is actually their birthday. They're turning 24. Happy birthday, guys. They're triplets, and they were
Wow.
quite young, as you were, when their parents split up. I think they were 3 as well. And they, during school, had a group called, I think it was called Banana Splits. The split
Yeah, I've
being
heard of this.
kids whose parents are
Yeah.
going through divorce. And it was that safe place in school that they could go and have lunch with other kids whose parents were going through divorce and talk about that. And that's what your blog reminded me of, a safe place for kids to hear that they're not alone, to hear that their experience is, I'm not going to say universal, but that how they're feeling is how other kids might feel. And I think also you have that ability to put into words what they may not even know they're feeling. Like, they know they're upset, they know they're angry, they know they're uncomfortable, but they may not understand why. For example, the conflict, and the example you give about the pickups and drop-offs. And I think that that's what makes this such a wonderful resource for the kids. Now, you mentioned you do blogs, as well as, did you do a reel, or do you do reels and TikTok?
So I'm quite active on Instagram as well. I'm trying to increase that a bit, but sometimes I do reels on my Instagram, and they've been awesome. The amount of people that kind of watch them, it's incredible, and just validates this idea that I am not alone. And I say at the end of my blogs, my tagline really is that you're not alone, you're seen and you're heard, and this is challenging, and everybody finds it challenging. But even me, in this whole process, I'm still going through this, and I am 22, but I'm still a kid, and I will always be a kid of divorce. And I myself am still maneuvering through these challenges. And when I see people watch these reels and be like, oh, same, I go, same, awesome. Like, because unlike your awesome stepkids, I didn't have a program at school where that was talked about. There was one other girl in my grade. I remember very vividly, we weren't even friends, but we had this common look that we knew each other were kind of going through the same thing, never spoke about it. Going into high school, I remember one not very nice girl saying, oh, Bella can't hang out on a Friday night because she has to spend time with her dad. Because her parents are divorced. And I remember at that point really thinking, oh, you think I'm different because of a decision that I didn't make. So I do think that this idea of community and this idea that you really aren't alone, so many kids are going through it, but we just don't talk about it. That was when I first had the conversation with my boyfriend, actually, about the blog. I just got back from overseas exchange. COVID just hit, and I was very down in the dumps. So I was like, oh, I just want to do something like profound that I really want to do for me. And I was like, I want to start a blog. He was like, what? I was like, yeah. I was like, there's no resources out there for kids. There's picture books and there's child psychologists who are brilliant. But unless you're willing to go and tell your parents, hey, I need to talk to somebody, there's nothing you can just go on your phone and read or listen to and say, oh, wow, okay, I get it. Somebody else gets it, good. So I said, maybe I'll call it taboo, but not taboo. It's this topic that's so taboo in my world, but everybody knows about it. And there's brilliant adults who talk about divorce, but nobody talks about the kids. And that's kind of how I was like, oh, maybe I'll call it A Kid with Two Homes. And he was like, oh, yeah, that sounds good.
That kind of works. Yeah.
And then a year later, this is where we're at. So
is this only a year that you've been doing this?
It was a year in November.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, then I'm even more impressed by what you've accomplished. And I do want to say to parents out there, Bella's Instagram, it's at A Kid with Two Homes. Go put it on your kid's phone, put it on there, because they're on their Instagram feeds. And when they're going through and they have that ability to see and stop for a moment and get a couple of tips from Bella, or hear that there's a commonality of experience, I really think that's important. The other thing that you just said that I also want to hone in on is you mentioned that other children who didn't have the experience of divorce sort of had a perception or a judgment around your life because of the way you phrased it was perfect, a decision you didn't make. And I think there's value. I've been talking about the value to parents of kids going through divorce and kids of divorce. There's value to everyone understanding what the divorce journey is like for children, for all adults and for all children whose parents are maybe still together. This is not something that you had any role in. My friend Ben Heldfond, who's one of the co-authors of Our Happy Divorce, always says his son Asher, they didn't want him to have to pay the bill for a dinner he didn't order, right? They didn't want him to be, the one who had to pick up the tab. And
I like that.
I think this is that same thing. You were a 3-year-old whose parents made a decision to end their marriage, and what you very skillfully have done is then taken your life experience and shared it in ways that are helpful to others. I want to ask you one last question, because I know this phrase means something to you, and I've talked about it in other episodes, but what does the term broken family mean to you?
I was just about to bring this up, and I was like, please ask it.
Yes.
It's one of my least but favorite topics, because you're speaking a lot of truth there. Because my parents made a decision, and because my family is a divorced family, this does not in any way, shape, or form mean that I personally am broken. No way. Not for a second, not for a day. And so I understand and I empathize with the fact that this term broken family is entrenched in culture, and it's never usually intended to really hurt somebody. So when I've been described as, oh, Bella, she comes from a broken family, but she still did this, I think, what?
Like, you managed to overcome. Yeah.
No, I have been extremely privileged, and I've had a fantastic relationship with both parents, and everybody has their unique situations, and there will feel times where somebody's parents' divorce makes them feel as though their family has been torn apart, and I understand that, but that does not make them broken. And so that was probably one of my favorite blogs that I wrote, because another aspect of a kid with 2 homes is to educate people who haven't experienced it themselves. One, being parents, but 2, especially being lay people who have beautifully nuclear families, which are awesome, and that's really great. But don't describe my family as broken just because we don't look like yours. And my family could be described in a million ways. I actually say, I like I said, I don't like putting a problem out there with no solution. I say, okay, don't call people a broken family. What should you say instead? Divorced, separated, a kid with 2 homes. Like, I'm more than happy to be described as that. Or ask, hey, I know your parents are divorced. When I'm talking about you, or if it comes up in conversation, which it usually doesn't, so it's not really relevant.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's not really relevant, but if you do need to, talk to me about that, how would you like me to talk about it? Like, how would you like me to define it? And again, communication, just not making people feel, especially kids, that they have to pay the bill for a dinner that they did not order. I love that. I love that so much. But if, I even give solutions for kids when I've been in the position where I've been said, oh, Bella came from a broken family, but I sat there a bit gobsmacked and didn't really say anything, but reflected on it and thought, okay, if I had my time again, what could I say? How could I deal with that? And in my blog, I go through that. I say, be respectful, because 1, they probably didn't mean it. 2, communicate to that person, hey, I know you didn't mean anything by it, and I hope you didn't mean anything by it, but I'm not broken. Instead, I'm more than happy for you to say, yeah, my parents are divorced, but this is the person that I am, and it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah. And it truly, you were saying, how would you want to describe your family? Well, we can describe your family as a basketball team. So, right?
We can. And that in itself even still baffles me. If you came to me 6 years ago and said that I would say, you're incredibly crazy and I think you should go speak to somebody because that's not possible.
You might need a little medication. Well, but it's actually, again, another message to people that it sounds like your communication started a ball rolling that allowed your family to create a different formation than what had been the pathway that had been followed. So in many ways, your bravery, and there had to be bravery involved in stepping up to have that conversation with your family, changed the trajectory of your not broken family into a basketball team. So I love that. And I truly love what you're doing, Bella. You put in your notes for the pre-interview that I ask all my guests if they have any books, because I love books and I love to promote them. And you say you don't have any yet, but it's a major goal of mine. I urge you to create a book. This is a book that's missing, that doesn't exist in the divorce vernacular, children of separated parents, and families could use this resource. So just take all your blogs and put them in, it's ready, let's go.
That means so much. Thank you so much.
No, I'd be a big supporter and a big fan. So when you do it, that's how I'm going to phrase it. When you do it, you let me know, and I will be the first person to be supporting that, because I truly think what you have done is remarkable. To know that you've only been doing it for a little over a year is even more remarkable, and you're remarkable. So I thank you for taking the time to share with my listeners, and I know now that they know about you and what you can share for them and for their kids, they're going to reach out for assistance. So how can they find out more about you? Where can they find the blog? Let's give them all the details.
For sure. So the blog is www.akidwithtwohomes, two spelled out TWO.com. And that's where my blog is found. You can see the about me. You can see other podcasts that I've been on. I'll have a link to this podcast there as well. You can see, a bit more about my background, what I've studied, etc. And obviously all the blog content. You can find my Instagram at a kid with two homes, again, two spelled out TWO. And you want to see me professionally, you can find me on LinkedIn at Isabella Duncan.
Oh, Isabella Duncan. I love that.
Yeah. So, Bella's better, but I'll leave it.
Oh, you know what? We all use our longer names in our professional world. So do reach out to her. I'm going to have links to everything in the show notes so that you can easily find Bella or Isabella. I'll even link to her LinkedIn profile. So again, thank you so much, Bella, and keep doing what you're doing. It's truly, I know you started it maybe as something for you. You're changing the world for a lot of families and children. Thank you.
That means so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.